Welcome in. Today, we're taking a really fascinating look at the digital world of 2026. We're going to shatter this illusion that there's just one giant, universal online threat out there. Our main goal for this explainer is to give you a much better picture than we currently have of what exactly makes different age groups feel unsafe. Because let's face it, a teenager experiences the online reality fundamentally differently than their grandparents do. All right, here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the online safety paradox, look at shared concerns around AI and fraud, dive into the illusion of youth, examine parents and older generations, and finally wrap up with the human factor. Let's get right into it. Section 1, the online safety paradox. Okay, let's dive into this. On one hand, people today feel incredibly connected and insanely productive, right? Our devices literally do everything for us. But at the same time, there's this dark cloud hanging over all that connectivity. We actually feel less safe online than ever before. It's a bizarre paradox. Somehow, all our technological comfort and our ability to zip around the digital world translates into this massive feeling of vulnerability. Listen to this. A whopping 70% of consumers worldwide now say it's actually harder to secure their personal information online than it is to lock the physical doors to their own homes. Imagine that. Your digital house feels harder to protect than your actual front door. On top of that, 75% of people say they're more worried about cyber risks now than they were just 2 years ago. The baseline of digital anxiety is just rising across the board.
Part 2. Shared concerns, AI, and fraud. Let's look at the nightmares that cross all generational lines before we get into the specific demographic splits.
Consider this absolutely terrifying statistic. A staggering 91% of people are actively worried about the dangers of artificial intelligence. And no, this isn't some vague sci-fi fear about robots taking over the world. It's very specific. People are terrified of deepfake voice and video impersonations, which is sometimes called vishing, and extremely sophisticated AI-generated phishing attacks. Basically, the fear is that we literally can't trust our own eyes and ears once we log on.
And unfortunately, that fear is firmly rooted in reality. Identity theft and data breaches remain an absolute universal fear. Nearly 3/4 of people, 73% to be exact, report that they or someone in their direct network have already been hit by cyber fraud. These aren't just hypothetical threats anymore, they are daily realities shared by almost everyone, no matter what year they were born.
Section 3, the illusion of youth. Now we're going to pivot to our first specific demographic, focusing on young people between 12 and 24, where perception and reality violently clash. I'm going to completely test your expectations here. You might think young people experience the most anxiety about online safety, simply because they spend way more time there, right? But the reality, up to 94% of young people actually say they feel completely safe online. Why? Because they're digital natives. They confidently tweak their privacy settings, they know exactly how to block users, and they feel a massive sense of control over their digital space.
Now, what's really interesting about these numbers is the massive contradiction hiding behind all that tech confidence. Despite 94% feeling safe, the 2025 data shows that 81% of Gen Z actually experienced online risks, a shocking 86% witnessed harmful content, and over 68% were exposed to deeply disturbing imagery, like content promoting self-harm or eating disorders. So this is the illusion of youth. Their technical skills act like a shield for their perception, but it absolutely doesn't protect them from sky-high exposure to real-world dangers.
It is absolutely crucial that we don't just see these as cold, hard numbers. This is the daily lived psychological reality for this generation. When a teenager opens their phone, there's a 40% chance they'll face bullying, a 42% chance of seeing racism, 35% for self-harm content, and 32% for misogyny. The primary threat for young people isn't some hacker stealing a credit card. The threat is a direct hit to their mental health.
And the data brilliantly illustrates how, even within this specific age group, the threats are not distributed equally at all. Young women are statistically far more exposed to very specific dangers. 30% of young women have been asked to share inappropriate or sexual images, compared to 14% of young men. Also, 27% of young women are exposed to content promoting dangerous eating habits, which is nearly double the rate for young men. For young women, the internet is just a different, significantly more dangerous landscape. But thankfully, we are seeing a surprisingly positive trend emerge from all this heavy data. The youth are fighting back. They are definitely not suffering in silence anymore. 71% of Gen Z now actively report online risks to someone when they encounter them. That is a fantastic jump compared to 59% back in 2023. They are actively and enthusiastically building a new culture of accountability and digital resilience. Moving on to Section 4, Parents and Older Generations. Let's shift our focus entirely from the digitally native youth to adults, whose anxiety profile looks completely different. So, as we're learning, treating online safety as a one-size-fits-all problem is completely impossible. While Gen Z, the group that can probably fix the family Wi-Fi router in their sleep, is battling harmful content and social engineering, adults age 55 and older have a totally different threat profile. They are primarily the targets and victims of financial scams. The scammer isn't going after this generation's mental health, they're going straight for their retirement accounts. And this leads directly to a massive gap in digital confidence, where young people feel empowered by their knack for privacy settings. Older adults often just feel completely overwhelmed. The average level of data distrust or unconfidence sits at 18%, but for adults over 55, this shoots up to a whopping 34%. They feel a huge sense of powerlessness over how giant tech companies are constantly collecting and selling their personal information in the background. Right in the middle of these two extremes, we have the parents. They act as this anxious bridge between their own data fears and the illusion of safety their kids project. Parents experience an incredible amount of stress regarding the digital world. They frequently admit to being completely shocked by the online choices and the unexpected exposure of their super confident yet highly vulnerable children. Section 5, the human factor. Let's move to the end and see how this all builds together into one common denominator. Across literally all age groups, cyber-enabled fraud is rising at an unprecedented rate. The absolute weapon of choice right now is phishing, and specifically smishing, which is SMS or text message scams that come directly to our mobile phones. Whether you're 16 or 65, you always have a phone in your pocket, and that phone is receiving highly targeted, increasingly sophisticated fraudulent messages that are almost impossible to distinguish from the real deal. Which brings us right to this massive, sobering number. Cybersecurity experts note that a staggering 95% of all data breaches involve human error. Let that sink in for a second. 95%. Despite all the advanced AI threats, the impenetrable firewalls, and the most complex privacy settings, our own behavior, our own tendency to accidentally click that one link or share code remains the absolute biggest vulnerability in the entire digital ecosystem. And we'll wrap up today's explainer with a provocative thought. Now that we have a much better picture of why specific age groups feel unsafe, we realize that threats are sharply tuned to our personal and psychological vulnerabilities. So if 95% of breaches are ultimately the result of human error, we have to ask ourselves, are the hackers out there the real threat? Or are we? Is our own generation's behavior the absolute limit of our online safety? Thanks for joining me on this deep dive, and I highly recommend you take a moment today to reflect on how your own digital habits shape your personal safety.